If you've always been on the verge on whether a transport or a streamer would change the sound, then you're just like me. I have never believed that a streamer or a transport would influence the sound, and naturally it shouldn't, because bits are just bits and data is just data, right? Today, something came along and changed my mind. We are reviewing the Keces Ebravo streamer. The name of the Ebravo actually sounds a bit ironic in Romanian, it's like Bravo. And while the naming could be interpreted as a joke, the performance of the Bravo is no joke. Priced at $599 US, this is one of the pricier transports out there, especially if you are just going to use it as a transport. But as you'll see, it can give you a really satisfying sound. Starting with the build and the quality, this is a metallic box. As you can see, pretty solid. It is not very heavy, about 1 to 2 kilos. It has pretty large feet at the bottom with rubber covering on them so that it doesn't slide on your desk. And there are no cooling holes because this is a unit that doesn't get hot, doesn't get warm even. You can barely know that it is turned on judging by its temperature. At the front we have 3 buttons. We have an on-off switch, which is clickable. It is not an engage-disengage switch. We have an input switch using which you can cycle through the inputs and you can select between the Wi-Fi, Ethernet, storage or Bluetooth input. And we also have a dim switch, which basically turns the display on and off. This is pretty much what you do as a control. At the back we have the inputs and the outputs, and the inputs include the antenna, which is a Wi-Fi/Bluetooth antenna. You can use it with both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So far I couldn't confirm whether there is support for high resolution Bluetooth. As far as I know there is only SBC, but somehow they managed to make it sound just as good as the wireless or even the wired connection. We have a standard Ethernet port which supports speed between 10 and 100 megabits per second, which transfers to 10 megabytes per second. We have a storage port which allows you to read a USB stick with data or a USB library. And then we have the outputs. EIS or IS/EBU, which is in the balanced format. We have the optical output and the coaxial output. We also have the power input, for which you need to use the power brick. And while we're talking about esoteric stuff like transports and powers, conditioners and such changing the sound, I should mention that Keces does make a linear power converter for it, which should further improve the sound. And the power brick they ship the Ebravo with isn't very large, and actually my unit doesn't even turn on with the original power brick. So for my review I have replaced the original power brick with a 12 volts power brick from a LED strip, which is also why I changed the recording setup. I didn't have the LED lights in the background and I wanted still to give you an interesting picture. So this is my wife's setup, not mine. Now we have a 12 volts/6 amperes output on the power brick I was using on my LED strip, and it works pretty well. So more amperes are good, more volts will fry your unit. Don't ever misplace the voltage. If it's 12 volts, use a 12 volts power brick. You can give it more amperes because typically the unit just won't drain more amperes from the power brick, but if you give it a higher voltage, it will most likely fry the circuits. Don't do that. It feels like giving it lesser amperes would actually make it misbehave. And although it just needs half an ampere, the smaller power brick that it comes with is just not working so well. The original power brick also has the disadvantage of the wire being a bit on the shorter side for a streamer, so it's less than 2 meters. And I found that my power outlet typically is a bit farther away beneath my desk. With the Ebravo, I mostly used the coaxial output. It seems like the coaxial and the optical output each have their own sound. Somehow I believe that there is some kind of data conversion going on which changes the sound. For example, the optical output seems to be the softest, which has the softest transient response, which means softer textures, a laid-back sound, and a fuzzier, heavier bass with a slightly smoother and rolled-off treble. The coaxial output seems to be the best sounding of them, and then the digital output, which I was comparing to my computer with, just has the cleanest, most resolute output, but the sound can be a bit clinical and a bit sharp, and that digital glare is audible. I have been using coaxial to 3.5mm cables, and for a big portion of making this video review, and just before filming it and before writing the full written review, I have used the iBasso D16 Type 1. This is a DAC amp which has a coaxial input at the bottom, but the coaxial input is in the 3.5mm format. So I have been using this adapter that the iBasso D16 comes with, which is pretty cool. Keces Ebravo, a streamer that actually proves me wrong, which is not a first, but doesn't happen quite that often. So I typically believed that streamers would not change the sound, and this has been my experience with most streamers that I've reviewed to date. For example, the Matrix Audio Mini i Pro 4 didn't really have that big of an impact on the sonic signature, although it could act as a rune endpoint, which gave convenience to the whole usage the Matrix as a streamer part. We also had the sound-aware A1X Pro, which was more of a media center. Once again, the sound was very similar to the sound coming from my computer, so there was not a big change in the overall sonic signature. While with the Ebravo, I've noticed a huge change in the sound. So this one sounds much more organic. It adds quite a bit of depth and of weight in the soundstage, but it also seems to process the sound slightly because it brings the bass guitars forward, so bass guitars are much closer to you. You hear them more clearly and better defined from the other instruments. They also bring the lead voices slightly backwards, so they pull on the voices, which creates more space between you and the vocalist. It gives music more space to happen. It's like widening the soundstage. The lead guitars are presented very slightly behind the lead voices, so you get the lead guitars also filling in the space quite a bit. Then the rhythm guitars, synths and other effects just fill the entire soundscape with music. Quite unique, I would say, because it gives you a much wider soundstage with an unexpected amount of vividness and clarity to the music. The sound becomes very contrasty. You just get a strong contrast between musical elements. You get the bass guitar always being really clean and really easy to hear. You also get the lead guitar being very well defined and very rich. It just has that natural texture to it. And since I've been using the coaxial output, as I was saying, it seems to have some kind of tuning of its own. It softens the transients slightly, so you get a slightly more musical presentation with a softer edge. You don't hear those hard transients, they don't sound edgy, they don't sound forced onto you, but it also adds a bit of warmth and of bass and of bloom to the sound, which creates a really natural sound. It just sounds so much more natural than the digital output of my computer. All instruments seem to have more body to them, more weight and more presence, and music just generally is more engaging. It just sounds more like a live presentation, like an analogic version of that sound, although this is a streamer and it is designed basically just for streaming. Somehow Keces managed to deliver something we were not expecting. They made a streamer sound more analogic than a computer. Of course, the computer is also digital. And I've been trying to pinpoint why this happens. There could be a few reasons. For example, the computer could apply a bit of processing to the sound. There is also the chance that some drivers and processes are interfering with the audio decoding part of the computer, so the data doesn't come out quite bit perfect. We also don't know what exactly the buffer is with the Keces Ebravo, because I've noticed it buffers almost the entire song instantly. There are no dropouts, the signal is perfect, but I mainly used it with Tidal Connect and Spotify Connect. I have not been able to use it with anything else. It just didn't seem to work quite that well, and the default app, the 4Stream application, which you've seen on other streamers, is just not my top choice. I don't really use Rune either because I don't find it more natural. Let's just say that Tidal Connect is so convenient and it does the job so well that I don't mind just using it forever. I get access to all the high resolution files, and I did know this in my full written review. The resolution of the Ebravo is limited at 192 kHz / 24 bits, which isn't the highest resolution that Tidal is capable of, but in my personal experience, it just sounds good enough. And if good enough sounds great, if you are having fun, you don't need to pump the resolution even higher. And I wanted to make a point out of this. Don't get scared if a DAC doesn't support high resolution. It's quite likely that most of your music is not available in a high resolution format because most bands just don't record, don't mix and don't master in high resolution. They just master at CD quality, or at least the releases they make, the version that is available to the public is typically in the CD format, which is 44.1 kHz and 16 bits. Keces answered a really big problem for us. Could you get a streamer that would also improve the sound signature of your system? Is a streamer worth the effort of purchasing a streamer, of having a streamer? It's $599 after all, which is not a small price. Some full stereo amplifiers aren't quite that pricey. And even Keces makes integrated amplifiers, which are around this price point. So at the end of the day, I'm willing and ready to answer that yes, the Ebravo is not just totally worth the asking price, it exceeds my expectations for the asking price. It's just superb in the resolution, in the clarity, and in how organic the sounds sound like. It just sounds a bit more like you are listening to that song live, like you are at a concert, then it sounds like a recorded digital file on your computer. Lately, I've been spending more and more time listening to live orchestras, and the difference can be quite noticeable. The main differences would be in how natural the music is like, not in how much extra noise you get, because at a live orchestra, there is quite a bit of noise. People tend to cough. Sometimes there are even arguments in the listening hall, if you can believe that. I've assisted at quite a few. So with a really good audiophile setup, you get the convenience of listening in your home, but you have the possibility of getting the quality that you get from a live experience. I hope that your experience at Audiophile Heaven is quite excellent. Please subscribe to Audiophile Heaven. Please like this video if you enjoyed the content, and share it with your friends if you found it useful. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope we'll see each other really soon. Bye!